a city on edge. Atlanta, in the summer of 2020, was already simmering. The COVID-19 pandemic had brought the streets to a hush, but not a silence. Uncertainty gripped the city, while under the highway bridges and tucked into urban corners, the homeless endured a harsher form of isolation. They were the forgotten, the people whose suffering went unnoticed in good times and whose deaths too often went uninvestigated in bad ones. But then, something even more sinister began to unfold. On the morning of June 1st, a construction worker walking under the Baker Highland Connector made a grim discovery. A man, later identified as 45-year-old Timothy Terrell Smith, lay lifeless on the concrete. He had been shot multiple times, execution style, a pool of blood, dark and thick, spread from his body like a grotesque halo. Police arrived, and news reports mentioned the death briefly. Another homeless man, another violent night in Atlanta, another statistic. But just 10 days later, another body turned up, this time under the I-20 overpass on Windsor Street. Then came the third, a woman gunned down in her tent. The deaths were linked only by a grim pattern. All victims were homeless. All were shot. All were killed in close range. And all were murdered in the same city within 2 weeks. The killer was still out there. The city was no longer simmering, it was on edge. And unknown to the public, the Atlanta Police Department had a terrifying theory forming behind closed doors. This wasn't random. This wasn't gang violence. This wasn't a feud. This was the work of a serial killer, shadows beneath the overpass. The morning of June 1st, 2020, was still fresh with dew when the call came into the Atlanta Police Department. A 911 dispatcher calmly relayed the information. A body had been discovered beneath the overpass near the Baker Highland Connector and Piedmont Avenue. The caller, a construction worker reporting for duty, had stumbled upon the grisly scene before the sun had fully climbed into the sky. By the time patrol officers arrived, the scene had already drawn a small crowd. Homeless individuals familiar with the area hovered nearby, reluctant but curious, murmuring softly amongst themselves. Yellow crime scene tape soon stretched across the perimeter, and the APD's homicide unit began its grim work. The body was that of Timothy Terrell Smith, a 45-year-old man known in the area as T or Tim. He was a familiar face among the homeless community, a man who kept mostly to himself but was never known to cause trouble. He had served time for minor drug charges but had no record of violence. In recent weeks, he had been living beneath the bridge, bundled in a thin sleeping bag next to an old shopping cart filled with his meager possessions. But now, Timothy's body lay